Hello, everybody. It says I'm live. Camera's working. I had a little technical difficulty here a little bit, and I had a lot to set up. So I am here now and ready to go for day 6 of the Spin Together. I am on my last different fiber today that I had set aside to spin during this week. It officially ends Saturday at noon, and this will be my last stream for it. When I stream again on Sunday, I will have all of the skeins to show you because it'll be all done and I will have measured it all up and submitted the yardage, and it'll be over very, very quick. Always goes by quick. So I have this last fiber today, which is Navajo Churro, and I also have a second bobbin of yesterday's fiber to do and one big plying project. So that's what I have to do yet before Saturday morning. Navajo Churro, very unusual. This is a passport breed. It is from the Shave 'em to Save 'em program, and it is considered, let me see, where is it here? Threatened. It is considered threatened. There are 2 more categories above that where they get better, so it's not critical, which is the worst, but it is definitely a genetic breed that needs to be taken care of so we don't lose it. So thank you all of those who are raising it. It is, I will give you just a brief history. I'm not really intending to do a breed study here today, but it is really one of the oldest North American breeds. And of course, it was brought here by the Spaniards. It has gone to the west where they settled. The Native Americans, particularly the Navajos, picked them up and started raising them for their fleece mostly, and are now very, very well known, so that the churro actually became Navajo Churro because they are the ones that are really preserving and using the breed for their traditional crafting of the Navajo rugs. They have a very specific way of spinning the fiber. It is probably become somewhat more automated. I'm sure they now have drum carders and they now have maybe spinning wheels. But the traditional way to spin it was a Navajo Spindle, which is not a drop spindle. It actually sits its point on the floor. It has a bottom whirl, so the heavy whirl is right there by the floor, and a long shaft runs up so that if you're sitting on a chair, it's right there by your leg and hands. If you sit cross-legged on the floor, you have to angle the spindle out away from you because of the length of the shaft. They also have a very traditional way of spinning, preparing and spinning the Navajo Churro fleece. It is something that I don't have any experience ever seeing somebody do it. I can only read about it and read what they do. I've studied this breed once before, many years ago, did a podcast on it, and I have some of that information still. But for this particular case, my plan is to do an experiment to try and spin somewhat close to what their traditional way of spinning it is. So let me tell you that first. Of course, it's on a drop spindle. It's on a spindle, not a drop spindle. It is on a spindle that is sitting right there beside their leg and hands, and I'm motioning in the camera, and of course you can't see it. And they will long draw, and I'm ahead of myself. The very first thing they do is card with hand cards to make a bat. Our traditional preparation is like this, where it comes already in a roving. Okay, so first of all, they will take their fleeces and hand card a bat, and it's about like that. Then they take that and draft that out to whatever thickness they think they want to spin from and do a first spin. And the first spin is nothing but putting some twist into the fiber, okay? So that they can then attach their next bat, twisting it on, attach another bat, twist it on. So that way they aren't trying to spin join after join after join as they work through their bats that they had carded. What they have is very similar to this, a big, long, thick, but somewhat twisted clump of roving. Then they take it off of the spindle, very carefully lay it by their feet, and use that then to draft a second single. It's called a second spin. They work mostly with singles. And the people who have done this forever and ever of their life, I'm sure they can create a single that is being used as soon as they can use it in the rug. I mean, they're not one to waste water on washing. After they've washed the fleece, they'll probably go straight to the weaving. They may dye it at some point before they weave it, of course. But the point is they are using singles. And that's the technique that I want to use this Shave It to Save 'em Passport fiber today to experiment with and to create a yarn to submit to the Shave 'em Save 'em page. Not easy. I have been playing with it some. I have a little bit to show you here. But before I get into that, there is two things about the singles. One has to be extremely sturdy. It is used for the warp, which will have a lot of pull on it, and it can't drift apart or anything. It's got to be very firm and tightly twisted. But it also can't be kinky. It has to be really smooth, right? So there's a technique, I'm sure, in order to get that, or they do a two-ply. I cannot find any reference one way or another to know. But for their warp, they definitely are using a single ply. Now I have two on here, two that I have pre-spun, they're singles. This one here is what I went for warp. It's as close as I could get. It's too thick. But then they may be warping a loom that can take this thickness or whatever. You know what I'm saying? If it's a rug, it doesn't have to be real fine work. It's not like you're making linen, right? And then this is the warp, the weft. This is the warp where it's strongly twisted, and as much as I could, the kinks are stretched out and is as smooth as I could get it. And this is the weft. This has a lot of process in order to get a single that I actually wouldn't have to set with hot water. I can take this single off of here. It'll have some twist to it, but it is relatively, it's not like it is super kinked up. But I did this. I got this. You could wind this on your shuttle and weave with it just fine. I got this with 3 passes through an orifice. The first one was the first spin. The second one was the second spin. It was incredibly overspun because I'm going the same direction. So the third one, I went backwards. And when I did that, I ended up with a very softly spun, what I would love to weave with as weft. I'm happy with this. It's 3 passes, but that's no different than if we make a 2-ply and go, 3 times through the orifice for a 2-ply, 2 singles and a ply. So that's the plan. My decision has to be how much warp I want to make and how much weft I want to make. I have a 12 by 12 inch square loom that I plan to warp with the warp. Just, string it back and forth. That's the way you do it. And use the weft to weave through all that and make myself what I would call a hot mat. Something you can take something out of the oven and sit on and it should be really nice. It's going to be this gray color. It's a very pretty color. That's the next thing I want to talk to about before I get into it. Navajo Churro comes in a huge number of colors. And that's another thing that makes it very desirable as a sheep to raise, because it goes from white, and let me get this over here and down here so you can see. The glary one is white, and that was a roving that I did a long time ago. And this was raw fleece that I got, washed, and experimented a little bit about how to spin it. I did a blended blend, and these are all 2-ply. And then I did a little bit of each of the colors, and you can see how pretty that is together. Now, Navajo Churro is not next to skin soft. Some people probably could tolerate it in hat or maybe mittens, right? But it is not a next to the skin soft. And then here is what I got this time around, and it's a real light gray. So you can see all the different colors that are there. It's really a versatile sheep, and they of course use it for meat also. I think that kind of gets you a little bit of history, and I'm going to set this out of the way a little bit and put my camera over here on my aura. Let me move this a little more. I'm going to get this adjusted here. I'm afraid to touch it because I've got it working, and I'm afraid if I get it working, it's not going to work anymore. Oh. Let me move that. And I'm going to show you this, but I'm going to keep it. This is the roving. I got 4 ounces of it that I have taken off of there and split it into really fine, but not yet really drafted strips. And this is what I'm going to be working from. So I have it in a basket here. And to be honest with you, it's going to be easier just to have it sitting over here, but you can kind of see it right there. And I'm going to show you how I did that. These pre-stripped off strips are usable for either the warp or weft spinning, whichever way I want to go. Okay, and the roving was about this wide, as you can see, and I just find some natural breaks and pull them apart. And sometimes they don't quite pull apart the way you want, but usually they do. You might have thicker and thinner areas, but that's going to be straightened out when I pre-draft it. I did try not pre-drafting these. I found it not successful. The pre-drafting is really important, especially for the weft. So I'll do one more here. Also, when I pre-draft it, I am getting some of the vegetable matter that's in there, because there is vegetable matter in there. I'm getting 4 or 5 strips out of the one width. This one is getting a little thin. And I will show you the pre-drafting, which is no different than all the other pre-draftings I've been doing. I am just trying to make this as consistent to the number of fibers in there, the thinness where you can see through it. I'm trying to get that as consistent as possible through the entire length. And the reason for that is because I will not pull on this fiber as its twist is going into it. I will not draft anymore at all. And you can see that just actually almost made it twice the length. So even though this looks like a really fuzzy, open fiber, it was pretty compacted in there in the original roving. I need to also let you know that the Navajo Churro is actually a dual-coated breed. It is not as distinct anymore, at least in whatever I have been working with, as the Icelandic, the Herefordshire, the ones that I had obvious tog and thel. It's not distinctive like that. It is pretty much, when it's processed, pretty much looks like one staple length of fiber. But it really has short and long. It also has a lot of kemp naturally, and it is impossible to remove the kemp. Now, the kemp is one of the things that gives pretty much strength to the fiber, and probably pretty important for working with singles, because it's going to get wrapped up in there. It's a very strong, thick white fiber, and it's going to get wrapped up in that twist and pretty much help hold that single together. Let's see if I can get some patch of kemp on the camera here. Like I said, it's kind of hard to find and see. Whoops, let me see here. It is this right there. But it won't always be that white or obvious. There's another one right there. Actually, the camera makes it look thicker than it really is. But it is all through the entire roving. Now, what's on my wheel is this spun for the first spin of weft. I am not a weaver, and it just doesn't come out of my mouth automatically. Sorry. I am working on weft on there, and I have done a first spin of what I am in the process of drafting here, and I'm going to put this on that bobbin, and then we will continue depending on time. I'm going to focus on this weft because the warp is pretty much like you would spin any fiber, right? You want it to be thinner and smooth, and there's not much difference between any other fiber and how you would spin this to make your warp. So I'm not going to really focus on that today. I am going to focus on this weft and this single. So I'll probably do 2 of these. And this is why I did some of it. Part of it was to find out if it was really going to work. And the other part is, I knew that in between I've got this time-consuming, I should have probably pre-drafted ahead, but I wasn't really exactly sure what process I wanted to use until I tried this. Okay, I am spinning your normal clockwise, and I am spinning, I've got it pretty gentle as I can get pull in, and I am not pulling on this fiber. I am just letting it pass through my hand. I am not drafting it at all, and you can see that I'm getting a twist there that's really soft and probably not real firm yet. Now this isn't working on my lap because I'm getting it drug into everything. This is not fast spinning, very slow spinning. I'm sure when they're doing it, they have done it forever. They know exactly what they want and can do it quicker. But this part can go real fast. Not touching it, not putting any kind of pinch on this at all. It is just sliding right through my two fingers. And I'm trying not to get this thicker area, but it will smooth out with the second spin. Just lay the next over. Joining's a little bit of a stretching process. I am kind of watching the roving that's behind my two fingers to make sure it looks somewhat equal. That's where I am getting this pretty consistent, very thick single. And if I do all of this like I intend, this one will be, when I submit this, I'm going to have many skeins, I think. But this one will be whatever I feel like I have time to work with today. I really like their idea of having, everything connected together so that then you can go and make your great big second spin single. But I'm working within the parameters of the roving that I purchased instead of recarding it into hand cards and having that many joins. I didn't see the necessity of that. Now that one didn't come out quite as smooth, but it also doesn't have quite the twist. I need to go a little slower. The only time I pinch it is when I'm joining. I do pinch it, and they were saying that some tradition was that they did the spit join, in order to get it to stick. Okay, I'm gonna do some more drafting of these that I have over here. Get this bobbin kind of filled up a little bit. I'm checking my camera. It has this habit of freezing. Now, some of these I took apart before I really had a good feel for what kind of final thickness I was going for this first spin. So I'm still splitting them a little bit. I believe I will try what I do today for the weft, the single for the weft. I believe I'm going to try and set with hot and cold water. Go from hot to cold. A little bit, just a little bit of felting to it. Don't really know if that's going to be necessary, but it's my final experiment before I do the rest of the project. No, it's not splitting right. There we go. All the way around, that didn't want to split right at all. I'm a mess. Let's stick it right there. This will be the last I put through as the first spin. I'm going to try and figure out if I can do this. I might keep this on my lap. I was considering while I was thinking and musing over this fiber for what I wanted to do, taking this exactly like this and knitting something with it to submit. Much similar to the Icelandic Lopi. Of course, I could take this single, knit with it right off the bobbin. That's the problem when they only send you 4 ounces and you got to submit 4 ounces. You're pretty much committed to whatever you decide to do with it once you make that decision. Can't really see my hands very well, can you? Sorry, my hands kind of have to be there. Both of them there right on top of each other. Up. Did I lose some? Where'd it go? There's a short one. It's so hard not to pinch, not to straighten, not to do nothing, but let the twist run in there. New muscle memory. All right, so I will take this off, put another bobbin on. I have way too long leaders on these bobbins. They need replaced, but haven't done that yet. And you can see down there, that's where it's going to feed up from the Lazy Kate. Going to do what's called a second spin. Now, I have no reference for this technique. This is entirely out of my own mind, so don't go looking for verification that it's something that's done normally. This is me playing. All right? This is just me playing. Now I am going to have to figure out how much pull-in I want on this. As you can see, I have a little bit left here from the last, this experimenting. And again, I am going to go the exact same direction. And boy, do I have pull-in. I don't want that much pull-in. And again, I am not pulling on the single. All right, now I want a little more pull-in once I got started here. All right. Because all I'm doing is putting twist, smoothing a little bit and putting more twist into the single. If we left the single the way it's going to end up here right now, it's going to, well, there's not that much. That's interesting. There's not all that much kinkiness to it. I may not have to run this through this third time backwards. I may have figured out the first draft with just enough. To make it work. Not getting as nice fuzzy. This is almost warp, okay? I think that this would work as warp. And that is exactly what I did when I made the warp that I showed you that was on the Nitty Noddy. So we're going to run it back through the third time. There's many of us spinners who have done this to undo the mistake of spinning the wrong direction. You know, oh, I was supposed to apply Z, and I was supposed to apply counterclockwise, and I applied, I applied it the same way it was spun clockwise, and I have all this twisty mess. I mean, a lot of us have done that one time or another. There's a big lump. I don't like that, but gonna happen. Happens in our regular spinning too. So this is the second spin. The first spin was just putting in a little bit of twist. It looks like this on the Navajo Churro. I am adding more twists so that, as you can see, maybe it is looking more like a tight single. This, as it stands, if I go ahead and wet it, wet felled it, which means take it from hot water to cold water while it's under tension on the Nitty Noddy, on my plastic Nitty Noddy. I'm pretty sure that would set it well enough that I can use it for the warp. I'm not warping a big loom. I'm just warping a little 12-inch square loom, so it's not going to have a lot of tension on it, and it should hold up fine. And if I take it backwards for my third spin, I will have my weft. And I'm going to take this backwards for the third spin after it runs through here. All I'm doing is grabbing where there's a little bit of chunkiness and letting more twist get in there. Just slowing it down just a little bit so I get a little bit more twist in those areas. That really smooths it out. But mostly it's pretty consistent because I did that pre-drafting and made sure that I was feeding about the same amount of fibers all along the length of the strip that I was putting twist into. Hi, RoboBabe, are you on break? HD Tomato, hello. Okay, the whole thing HG asked, why not put it in the first time? The tradition of the Navajo spinning, and this is Navajo Churro fiber, so I'm doing a trial to demonstrate how they would do it with their Navajo Spindle, which is they put a first twist in, they do a first spin, they always do a second spin, and I have gone one thing further for my warp of a third spin to go backwards and fluff it up. And I can show you right here, since you missed the first part. This is my experiment. When I take this that I'm spinning off, as it is right now, it'll be good for warp, and it is a single. The whole thing is I'm working with singles only because that is also the tradition of the Navajo, is that they do their rug weaving with singles. Okay, so that would be the warp. It's reasonably smooth. It's a rug loom. It doesn't have to be real fine like linen, and that would be sturdy enough because of the second twist to hold up to being warp. But weft, I want a real nice, fluffy, loose yarn. And you don't get that very easily because this is what you end up with, the warp looking. So once I have done the second twist, I will go backwards, untwist, and make my weft. And that's what this is. And this, I don't think, oops, I just hit the mic. This weft, I don't think I would even have to wet felt it. It has some twist to it, but it's certainly what you could put on a bobbin and run through your warp. So that's the whole reason that I'm doing these multiple spins. The very first one takes, so the fiber came like this. It's in a roving. I broke that roving down into strips, and I will break it down even more. I will pre-draft this to exactly the thickness I want to put the first twist in for the first spin. I will run it through, and that's down there on, that's this that's coming up in here. That's just twisted once. And then I will do it second time for the second spin. And if I want warp, I'm done. And if I want weft, I go backwards and get a fluffier yarn. So this one I'm going to go backwards and make the weft. I am not drafting on this that's going in there at all. All I'm doing is adding more twist. Except for the very few thicker places where I didn't draft out exactly even enough. This, if you take it off, is going to have energized single. It probably would need to work with it. It's probably going to be best to do the wet felting, which is the hot and cold water while it's on the nitty knotty under tension, and let it dry that way. Almost to the end here, and I'm hitting more uneven as I was getting started. Got my fingers figured out as I went further along. Okay. Let's take this and break it right there. See, I can't even break it. I cannot break that. That is incredibly strong. And part of that is because of the fleece is dual coated. It has long, sturdy outer fibers, and it also has kemp, and that makes a very sturdy yarn. Not next to the skin soft by any means, but very serviceable. This is a passport breed. It is threatened. It's a threatened the genetics threatened situation. Let me get this straightened out here. You can see how kinky it is. Very energized. Doesn't want to work. Okay. This I'm going to put down on the Lazy Kate and run through the opposite direction. And, you know, everybody, so at the beginning, I did say, I'm sure everybody's thinking, okay, why do you want to make something that you have to go through 3 times? You have to feed through your orifice in your bobbin and everything and mess with 3 different times. Well, the answer is you do that anyway with standard 2-ply yarn. And I want a single, and it is traditional, so that's the answer to that. All right. Where's my... Trying to unwind this. There we go. All right. Gonna go the opposite direction here. And let me get my camera fixed. There we go. Would help if I put it on my nitty notty, wouldn't it? I mean my Lazy Kate. Okay. And again, I'm doing nothing but untwisting. And I need more pull-in. You want it to be brought into the thing before it just totally untwists it all, so... Still want more pull-in. And I have more thick and thin spots than I really like. I wish that it was all real consistent, but it's not. This is a learning experience for me too. Pretty much have been thinking this through and playing with it this week, and this is the result. If you could figure out how to get exactly what you want on your second that was as nice and fluffy as this, you wouldn't have to do this third one. I haven't figured out how to do it yet. In other words, it wouldn't be so that it's all real energized. You have a relaxed single that you can still set if you want with the water, but you could use it to weave with. You could knit with it too. I don't know how much that would be a problem as far as untwisting more, to be honest, because that knitting and the direction we ply, which is the direction I'm going, knitting tends to loosen that. The natural process of throwing the yarn and everything. So you may run into a little bit of problems knitting with it. I'm going after a piece of hay there. Sorry, I know the wheel's kind of loud today. That is because these 3D printed spindles from Acreworks aren't as heavy as the wood bobbins, and I have a wood one here. I should have used it, but it's not as heavy, and they rattle more. I'm also sort of avoiding the ends. The open pattern work on them tend to catch and snag the yarn when I'm winding it off, so I kind of keep away from the ends of these bobbins. So in order, well, no, I can't do that. I was trying to figure out how I can decide how much. I think I'm going to have to get my square, 12-inch square loom and run a waste yarn on what the distance would be for the warping of it and count that, and then make sure I spin enough of the this Navajo Churro in order to warp it, and then make the rest of it as what is this kind of yarn, the weft yarn, because I can use this in more than just the weaving sample that I'm going to be making with that 12-inch loom. As I said, there's other uses that I can use this for, and so I'm not going to really want to use the really super twisted warp yarn for anything else. I think I'm only going to want to use it for that project. Okay, so let me wind this onto my nitty knotty, and you can see it. This is what I did before the stream. Just a little sample of weft. I think that what I just did right now is not as thick. Going to have some texture to that mat that I make, probably. Different thicknesses. That's what it looks like. Oops. Where's my camera? That's what it looks like. Not a traditional yarn, I know that. We are playing today. We are creating, experimenting. One of the things I do best. All those, well, let's see ifs. Let's see if this works. And as I suspected, since I only want to do an hour stream on these more weekday streams, as I suspected, this will be the last that I do. Not going to use my wheel anymore. I'll set it aside. And please forgive me as I count. Each one of these wraps is 1 yard. And I don't want to hit the mic. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Whoops. Broken. Not enough twist. Probably a place I should do a spit join, but not gonna. Yeah. I have an area where it isn't twisted enough. And what that means is I need to work on maybe putting just a little more twist in the beginning. Because the process is sound, it's just that I hit this area where it's not twisted enough. Alright, we'll go with that. Anybody remember what I was on? I think I was on 17. $18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Now, obviously, these knots in a weft is not good. Something I'd have to work around. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and close enough. 33 yards. Okay. If you look on my tabletop here, that's the Kemp falling out. And this is the final yarn, the weft yarn. 3 passes through, 2 times to the right, 1 time to the left, just like you do with 2 singles and make a 2-ply. But you get this really nice, soft, fuzzy, somewhat fragile, somewhat strong yarn. You pull on it, see, not breaking. If you get the right set of twist in there, you get thin areas, it'll break, but otherwise, it's gonna work just perfect. So that is spinning Navajo Churro. And if you came in the middle, maybe you want to go and check it out and watch the very beginning too, as I explain more about the Navajo breed, about its history a little bit, about the different colors that it comes in. It's all there on this hour of streaming. I hope you've enjoyed this. I had a ball. It worked. I had a few butterflies in my stomach, wondering if it really would. And it did. So I will finish up this fiber. I will stream again Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is just a spin, chill, relax, chat. So by all means, come and join me. I won't be teaching. I'll be chatting. And also, I will have all of the skeins that I spun over the last week for Spin Together to show off, as well as some fiber that has come in the mail. So until later, happy spinning. Bye.